Hello and welcome to Higher or Lower, brought to you by Spreadex and oddschecker. I'm your host George Elek. I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Worth and Jack Wright as we look ahead to the Premier League campaign, looking at player goal spreads. This time, this is where Spreadex have a line, a buy price and a sell price for most Premier League players. If you sell the sell price, that means you think the player is going to score fewer goals than the line. If you buy, then you think they're going to score more. This is the second episode we've recorded today of Higher or Lower. If you want to watch the first one, where we talk about teams, and particularly bullish Jack on Liverpool, me on Chelsea. Make sure you go back and have a watch of that one. But in this episode, we're focusing on goals, and the first round here is where I read out a player's name. The midpoint value, which lies between the buy and the sell price, is what we're going off here, and we will all hold up either a higher or a lower to suggest what we think we would do in terms of buying or selling on the spreads. And where else can we start? Of course, the man himself, Erling Haaland. A ridiculous season last season, I think surpassing all expectations, even those who were predicting him to be top goal scorer. Plenty of people backing him at decent prices. None of that this time around. 36 goals in 35 games last season. The spread, or the midpoint of the spread this time around, is 27. Are we going higher or lower? 3, 2, 1.
Oh.
Right, higher for the lads. I'm going lower. Jack, we'll give you first run.
Yeah, well, you said it all there. Absolute machine last season. For me, it's a question of will he keep fit? Yeah. If he's fit, he'll get 30 plus, in my opinion. The guy wants to play. He wants to play every game. He wants to score in every game, at least once. Yep. And he pretty much did that last season. And he wants to break records. And he's at a team that's set up to do that. He's their literal number 9. He's there to score goals for them. And they're there to supply him. And he's got, obviously, a whole wealth of talent to do that for him. So I watched him in the flesh last season. I expected him to be impressive. He blew me away with every aspect of his game, his strength, his power, his pace, acceleration, his movement, and his scoring ability. So for me, it's a high line, of course it is, but I can't see him falling short of it. If he stays fit, he's going higher. Right.
Dan, what do you make of it?
Yeah, he covered all bases really. Like the fact he put almost 10 on that prediction last season does the work for me, I think. And I mean, I got burnt a little bit on my my pre-season Erling Haaland goals last year, so I have to go higher now.
What were you selling?
Definitely, yeah. I was definitely putting the sell up under 20. So yeah, that's not one I'm too proud of. But also, like, just being in the City team, he's going to get loads of chances. He topped the XG. He topped the league for XG last year, unsurprisingly, with 30. So he's just going to get loads of chances, and as we've seen last season, he's probably going to score more than he misses.
Yeah, I'm basically selling mainly because injury plays a big part in this. He's a player who's had injuries before. He's not the most durable. Yes, I know last season he remained fit for the most part, but just by kind of a law of averages, at some point he's going to have a bit of a break. And also, we just saw in the back end of last season that he is human. At a time where City was still performing well and he was starting every game, he scored just 1 goal in 8 in their final 8 games of the season, and that came at Goodison. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm always wary of thinking that a landmark season can be repeated. Obviously, he doesn't have to repeat it totally, but it is an incredibly high line. And yeah, as we say, last season was a bit of a standalone, and even then you're only losing, 8 points. So, yeah, I mean, the spread is 26 to sell, 28 to buy. I personally would be on the short side, but I'm not actually going to do it myself. It's just too scared. Second up is Harry Kane, who, the transfer saga rumbles on. Will he be a Spurs player next season? It's important to point out that these bets on these markets are only they're void if the player doesn't play in 10 separate games. So if Harry Kane starts the season in a Spurs shirt, scores 2 goals, then is sold on deadline day, unless he's played 10 games, which I think is impossible, then your bet will be voided rather than your sell bet having a 20-point profit. Kane, 23 is the midpoint, 22 to sell, 24 to buy, higher or lower than 23. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Dan, let's start with you. You're going lower.
Yeah,
you had the wrong panel up there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did I go lower? I probably have made a mistake here when my first line here is that he had the 3rd best conversion rate in Europe last season. I just think that even if he doesn't go to Bayern, it's almost certainly his last season. And I just wonder if we get to January, he starts, or Ange starts to look to the future and maybe doesn't give him as many minutes as he was getting at the start, starts putting the priority on Richarlison and things like that. It might be wishful thinking now that I've put the lower pad up, but that's my rationale. Yeah, I'd be selling, I think.
Jack?
Yeah, I've got to be going higher here for Harry Kane. Great point that you make as far as that 10-game buffer, I think, because this is based on him staying.
Well, it should say, like, a January exit, if it means they're going to get a bit of money in and Bayern come calling again and things haven't started too well, is definitely feasible.
That is a risk, yeah. That's another good point.
Uh-oh.
That's two good points, yeah. Maybe you didn't put the wrong paddle up. No, but I'm confident, yeah. 30 goals last season, 43% of Spurs' total goals. That's not even taking into account how many assists he laid on as well. Yeah. I think he's going to thrive with Maddison behind him. I think that's a fantastic sign. And Maddison's a player that I absolutely adore. So I think that could be a very good partnership. And of course, under a more attack-minded manager than he has been over the last 3 or 4 seasons. So, and all of the managers that he was under last season. So, yeah, for me, that's a nice line to go higher.
I think that Maddison playing behind Kane is massive for Kane if he does stay. Like, one of the most creative, genius players are breaking down a low block. Means that Kane might need to less without dropping in. I think it's going to be really exciting if he does stay to see what they do, especially given the way that Postecoglou likes to play.
And on penalties, of course, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Always important. Another player who should be on penalties, all things well, is Mo Salah. And Salah's spread here is 18.5 to sell, 20 to buy. So the midpoint is 19. So 4 lower than Harry Kane. What are we looking at here? Higher or lower? 3, 2, 1. Down again.
I know.
Hang on.
I know.
Hang on.
Oh no,
Go on,
I'm probably going to struggle to justify this one. I guess the reason I've gone lower is because I think 19 is probably bang on, if I'm perfectly honest.
In that case, you have to put both in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely both.
There's that about right handle that we
and then that way I can't lose, right?
Yeah.
I think
19 last season, 23 the season before that, 22 the season before that. So, in fairness, you have to go back to 17-18 when he scored 32, when he's actually blitzed this line.
Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better, actually.
There you go, I've done it for you.
Yeah, thank you. I just think, again, similar with Kane, is that Liverpool are sort of in their next phase now, and Mo Salah is kind of one of the last that is still around. And I don't think that will impact him so much, but I think we'll see more from the likes of Nunez, Diaz, and obviously Gakpo as well, which might take the pressure off him, which might see his tally drop a little bit. But who knows? This is Mo Salah we're talking about, so he could hit 19 easily, but we'll have to see.
Jack?
Yeah, you've took the words out of my mouth there, really. As I called him Mr. Consistent, Mr. Reliable since coming in from Roma, 32, 22, 19, 22, 23, 19. So super, super consistent, as we said, on penalties as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing them this season with this sort of new look, Liverpool, certainly in those forward areas. I think that they've got so much about them. So as I said in the last show, the team show, that I'm very bullish about Liverpool and their chances this season. That will replicate in itself that Salah will have a good season. I think working with Nunez and that new midfield, and of course Trent Alexander-Arnold into that hybrid role where he fired in like 7 assists in his last 10 games. So if he can continue that over a season, that's only going to see a lot of goals for Liverpool shared out amongst those forward players.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up for Arsenal, we've got Bukayo Saka, and the midpoint here is 11. Are we going higher or lower? 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, we're all going higher.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dan, why higher for you for Bukayo?
Well, I think he's just one of those players that seems to improve every time I see him, particularly year on year. I don't know if that's actually replicated in the stats, but it just feels that way. He scored 14 last season, did take on a lion's share of the work, I suppose, or took on a big chunk of the work with Jesus being out. But Arsenal obviously like to share the goals out last season. But yeah, I think he'll just go from strength to strength. And Jesus is obviously going to be out for, potentially a couple of weeks at the start of the season. So Saka's going to be straight in and hopefully leading by example and getting off to a flyer.
Yeah, Jack?
In the words of Countdown, just so you can see my working out, so go from strength
to strength.
What I put there, yeah. So 11 the line, 14 last season, as you said, 11 the season before that. So since he's become established really in that Arsenal side, he's been all over that line, and do expect him to be on that upward trajectory. Got his first career hat-trick obviously as well in officially close season for England on international duty. Again, another player that should be on penalties, although he has missed one in pre-season, so let's hope that won't put him off. He's come back from that before, I believe, missing a penalty.
Yeah.
And I'd say he looks a guaranteed starter for Arsenal on that right-hand side. I think the rotation is more central than that on the left-hand side as well. So I think with, again, another solid season for Arsenal as a collective, he'll start for them again, I believe, and I like that line a lot.
Yeah, this is my biggest fancy for sure. I think to downgrade him 3 goals off the back of a 14-goal season seems bizarre. I actually think there's a fair chance that maybe not this season, but in one of these next few seasons, Saka's going to have a breakout scoring season where he scores 20 plus. Like, I don't see why that wouldn't happen. He's still only 21 and he scored double-figure goals in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah,
and as you say, that is no obvious. It looks like Kai Havertz might start the season playing up front for Arsenal, who's a brilliant footballer, a great link player, but not necessarily a goal scorer. And I think that could even improve Saka's chances of being their main goal threat. A player who had a big breakout season last season in terms of goal scoring, kind of out of nowhere, was Marcus Rashford. The midpoint for his goal spread is 16. It's 15 to sell, 16.5 to buy. Are we going higher or lower here? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, or lower.
Wow, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, this is just getting against a purple patch, really. That I never really saw come even as good as he was. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think the main driver of this is that it's, still question marks at this point as to where he plays. I'd imagine if Haaland comes in, he'll shift back over left, which he is saying is his favoured position. But undoubtedly that will mean less goals, surely. He scored 8 goals from his 16 appearances as centre forward for United last season. So if you take those away and he's on the left, I'm not saying he'll score 8 fewer, but there will be some sort of difference. Also, the purple patch you mentioned is interesting because he missed the second most big chances in the league last season,
Really?
22.
Wow.
Like
So
that.
just
Right,
takes
that one down.
just takes a little.
You've even got the headshots of the players.
Oh,
in
yeah.
some of the
I know,
league.
just in
How
case
do you have the time?
Oh man, I know. So what to do? That's when you haven't got a little 1-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough. Yeah.
But it just takes a little dip in form, and that goal tally from last season could half easily.
Yeah.
Similar thought processes, going out onto the left-hand side, which might well be his favourite position. I also think him signing a new contract could potentially be a little bit of comfort zone returning. 11 the season before last, 4 and 11 in his last 2 seasons prior to that upturn again last season. It is a joint record, I believe. I think last season we were 17. He's not topped that before. So I just think there's more juice in the lower, as you say. I think there's more chance that he will duck under that for many reasons as opposed to going over. I can't see him, say, hitting 20, 23, but more likely to be around about the 10-ish mark. So, yeah, I like that as a lower.
Yeah, I totally agree. It feels like a season that's probably going to define his career in terms of goal scoring. He got 17, so I don't see a massive reason why he'd outscore that this time around, especially with a new striker coming in.
No.
It feels very high. Raheem Sterling, next up.
Oh.
I didn't realise he was on the list, and we had a chat about this off air.
Yeah.
8.5 is the midpoint here. 8 to sell, 9 to buy. Where are we looking? 3, 2, 1.
Yes, we have gone, right, okay.
Jack.
I thought so.
I felt a little bit crazy going lower for the Premier League legend in Raheem Sterling, but then I couldn't get away from last season where it was awful for him. He went on record saying he'd bulked up a little, he'd changed his diet, and which then led to him getting a few injuries, the hamstring injuries as such, as where he kind of laid the blame to that. But just looked completely lost, looked shorn of confidence, and a completely different player. He looked like an imposter out there. So he missed 9 games last season. He scored 6. He hasn't scored any in pre-season so far, so there's no reason to suggest that he's suddenly rediscovered that form. I think rotation risk is a massive key here as well. And he generally starts slow also when you take into account how he started at Manchester City, those first couple of seasons there. He scored 6 and 7 goals before he then went on to hit big numbers. So absolutely, for me, I'm taking the low road here.
Dan?
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm actually quite keen on the lower here, mainly because I'm very worried about his game time. Some of the guys that Chelsea have brought in will be putting pressure on his spot, and based off his form from last season, I can't imagine his place, if he already has a starting position, will be around for long if he doesn't get off the mark very quickly. And yeah, I can't really see it. As you said, no goals in pre-season.
Yeah.
He's not giving me any signs that he's going to be chasing down that spread.
The best sells are when you can either find a player who's going to come off the bench late in games and not play very often, and therefore hits the 10 or leaves in January. And I think with Sterling, there's a chance that both could happen. I can't see why he'd play too many minutes. And if you can somehow just get those 10 substitute appearances in the bag, you know, it wouldn't massively surprise me if Sterling ends up on 0 or 1, really. Very keen on that sell.
I did the same bet with Timo Werner last season, and I think he went a bit too early for me last season, but that was the same thought process at Chelsea.
Sure. 4 more, we'll rattle through them. Jack Grealish, 5 to sell, 6 to buy, so the midpoint is 6.5, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. All in again.
Across the board.
Breakout season last season, set to our goals for his game.
I like it a lot. Yeah, I just think that, say, he's getting to know the Pep way. Tends to be that scenario. We talked about Sterling a moment ago, and how he took a couple of seasons just to kind of work his way into it. You've got so many chances there on that left-hand side, drifted in and tucking them away at the far post, as we saw from that. So I think there's so much juice in this. He scored 5 goals last season, so the line said at 6.5. He's not got to go too far over that. I can't see, how it's going to be a lot worse than that. If it is, I don't see that at all. So yes, he only beat it once for Villa when he scored 8, but this is a completely different setup, of course. Here, I think that looks like we've got Foden now adopted to that right-hand side, so the sort of pressure's off there as far as rotation risk is concerned. I think he's nailed on starter. I think he's certainly won over Pep and the crowd and the doubters, and very much looking forward to seeing him perform this season. Yeah,
absolutely. Me too. It feels like watching him the back end of last season, he's perfected getting the ball on his right, getting the ball on the left, shifting onto his right. Hasn't quite perfected that whip into the top corner yet, but that's going to come. Dan, anything to add?
No, I just absolutely love Jack Grealish, and pretty much everything he does, he can do no wrong in my book. And as you mentioned, it's not a massive upturn from 5 from last season, and I think he'll probably play more games. He's had his season now. As you say, he understands Pep. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and I agree with everything you said. And I'm hoping, as I said, just because I love him, he has a great season.
Me too.
As always with spread betting, of course, is what the risk is. There's next to no risk with this. With going up as a buy here with that low line. Absolutely.
Right, back to Arsenal. Kai Havertz is 9.5 as a midpoint, 9 to sell, 10 to buy, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Jack, you're lower, we're higher. What's your reason?
7, 8 and 4 goals across 91 games in 3
17 in the Bundesliga a couple of years
ago.
Yes,
exactly. I'm coming on to that. Thanks very much. 12 and 17 for Leverkusen. So which version are we going to get? Overnight, Jesus obviously had been injured and possibly been out for a few games this season. Might well have changed my mind as my caveat. But as it was set up for this season, it looked like he was going to be performing in a more of a deeper role. I just felt that with Arsenal, the goals would be shared across the board and more so in those forward players. So a tight one, a very tight one. It was a bit of a coin flip, and I can see arguments either way, which I'm sure you're going to convince me with both yours now.
Go on.
Well, I just think, again, I've written my rationale here before the Jesus news, which I don't think changes my mind, but in my head he was going to be coming late, latching onto the pullbacks from Saka and Martinelli, which if he's starting up top, he might not be as much. But I don't think that will hinder his goal scoring. However, the only thing I am worried about is he has a big tendency to get caught offside, second most last season. So hopefully Arteta's been using that pre-season to teach him about timing his runs, and he'll hit that tally easily, I'm hoping.
Yeah, he's another one who I just think is set at some point to a breakout year. He's too good not to, really. I don't think Chelsea fans saw the best of him, and maybe Jesus' injury might give him that opportunity up front, and they'll make it his own. It is a low line for a guy that's definitely got it in him to be prolific. A player who went to Chelsea, you can argue, somewhat in place of Kai Havertz, despite playing in very different ways and different roles, is Mykhailo Mudryk. And he showed flashes on debut of what he can do, and then very little after that. But we know that he is a very exciting talent. He's 5.25 to sell, 6.25 to buy, so 6 basically is the midpoint. We're going higher or lower. 3, 2, 1. Okay, Dan, you're on your own.
I am. I just think he can't do any worse than last season.
That's the fallacy here.
That's the long and short of it, really. And I think we've spoken about juice, I suppose, is the term we've been using. But I think at 6, the line is about okay. So if you're taking the higher, as I'm suggesting here, and buying, I don't think the downturn is that big. I may well eat my hat. But yeah, he's got a bit of experience now in the league. He's done okay for Ukraine. which is something else that I've been considering here, which I'm hoping he can translate and bring to Chelsea next season and get some goals. That would be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a low line, so I can see why there's appeal. As I said, there's not a lot of downside to it, but he didn't score any in 15 last season. Admittedly, he didn't get loads of game time, but that possibly can be replicated this season as well. As we know, Chelsea have got a wealth of talent, so that rotation risk is in there. He has scored once in pre-season, so he's got that off his back at least. 7 goals of his best return for Shakhtar in league competition, so again, not prolific, although an exciting talent in those forward areas, not necessarily as an out-and-out goal scorer. So would have been disappointed as far as last season was concerned. You know, will he acclimatise in time? Time will tell. Ben Chilwell said he's got untold potential, so we'll have to see if that gets delivered. And Mudryk himself said he performed to about 20% of capacity last season. Yeah. So let's see if he can up that. Yeah. But for me, I'm prepared to take it that he won't be able to up it enough to give me problems at that line. So yeah, selling.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to side with what you've seen rather than what you've heard. And with Mudryk last season was so disappointing. And the final one in round one, really interesting one. This one feels like one of the most volatile in the market is Darwin Nunez. 12 is the midpoint here, 11.5 to sell, 13 to buy, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah, full house.
What are we missing here? What are we missing? Why is the line so? I mean, this is one where for me, the potential up from 13 is so, it's huge. Like where, is there any way? Can you see why Jack the line is so low?
Glad you come to me first, because we have actually had discussed that this is both of our favourite picks.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it, all 3 of our favourite picks here.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive one. Great to leave till last. 9 goals last season. Had untold amounts of chances, just didn't quite click. But there's a theme with Darwin Nunez over his career so far, which wouldn't make us worry about taking the high line here and buying this price. Scored 16 goals in Segunda in Spain for when Benfica noticed him and brought him over to Portugal. 6 goals in his first campaign for Benfica then, after they'd spent 34 million euros on him, I believe, and then 26 in that season, which obviously alerted Liverpool and many others as well. So the second season, I think, will be the same kind of scenario, settling an upward trajectory. I think he's got all the attributes that you need. He's going to be in a side that I believe will be creating lots and lots of chances and scoring lots and lots of goals. Salah, as much as he's a goal scorer, still assisted double figures last season. We've also got the players coming out from injury and also that new energetic midfield that Liverpool have put together. And of course, as I've already mentioned, Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I think there'll be a lot of chances for him, and I expect him to take a lot more than what he did last season. So I think that's a cracking line and my star pick.
Great stuff.
Lovely.
Yeah, sorry I didn't come to you first there, Dan.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think there's anything to add. I really don't. The one thing I can add is we put this one to our Twitter followers as well.
Nice.
And a resounding 80% are with us,
wow.
and they'd be buying. So we can blame
always
the
worries
masses.
me this. When something like this happens, it never comes off. It's like when all the same tipsters put up the same goal for on a weekend, they can't win.
Yeah.
And it feels like this is what's happening with Darwin. I mean, I totally agree. It just feels like this is one of those that spread betting is kind of made for, where I would understand if the over-under line was, on the fix was like 5 to 6 each side of 12.5, I wouldn't necessarily be that keen on backing over. But the spread betting, where the exponential progress of this bet can catch fire if he does have one of those seasons, is massive. Yeah. So I agree. Yeah. That is round 1 over with. We now have a bit of fun in round 2, where I put my paddles away and I say to the guys, I'll read out a player and their midpoint, and then it's higher or lower. So these guys have to put up their paddle to say if they think that player's spread or midpoint of their spread is higher or lower than the one before. You're eliminated if you get it wrong. So we have. I was about to say who won the first episode, but I don't want to.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah.
Don't spoil it.
Okay, we're going to kick off with Dan Burn. Any guesses what Dan Burn's midpoint is?
2.
Correct. Oh, I'm now worried that he's looked already.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't be. I really wouldn't be.
We'll find out. Okay, so higher or lower than 2. Enzo Fernandez. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, higher. We're looking at. I'll tell you the midpoint to start with, and then if you're getting too good, then I'll stop telling you. Enzo 5 is the midpoint for Enzo. His former teammate, not for long, Mason Mount, now of Manchester United. Right. Next up, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, correct. 7 is the midpoint for Mason, Money Mason at United. Now for a striker, first striker in the list, Dominic Solanke. Had a very good campaign last season for Bournemouth. 3, 2, 1,
Tricky.
go.
I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, both correct. Midpoint is 9.
9, yeah.
And now it gets very tight. I think it's so tight I'm going to keep on telling you the figures, otherwise it's too hard. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who good for a goal, good for an injury.
Yeah.
This is what I think or what they think.
Yeah,
is the
that's
question,
what I'm trying
isn't
to.
it? So
yeah,
I'm
What
gonna,
they think, I think.
yes,
Sure.
it would be the game,
Otherwise-
wouldn't it? Yeah, would be the game.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah.
Both correct. 8 is the midpoint.
Wow, that was
Nice.
tight.
Next up, one of the best, in my opinion, most exciting, brightest talents in the Premier League yet to get the big move. It is Ebere Eze, Crystal Palace. Zahalus, Crystal Palace, nonetheless.
Indeed. 8.
3, 2, 1, go. One of you
Yeah,
He's right.
is right. It's higher. 9 is the midpoint. Dan, beaten. Jack is the winner.
Close.
Okay,
Very
well, let's rattle
close.
through these then. Next
Yeah.
up, Luis Diaz.
Then 9-ish. 8.
Then 9. No, lower. There you go. Job done.
there we go.
He's done it. Luis
Still
Diaz. I mean, if you think higher, Luis Diaz is 6.75 to sell, 7.75 to buy.
Buy.
Obviously, injury issues last season.
Yeah.
They play a part in that.
Yeah.
You've got Almiron, whose midpoint is 5. Harry Wilson, 5. Emi Buendia, 6. Mbomo, 10. Loads in there. Declan Rice, 4.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Bramo's an interesting one, obviously, in the
Yeah.
absence
Yeah.
of Ivan Toney.
And Jadon Sancho, 5 as well. Like, you think if he's anywhere back to his normal self and he stays at the club, he might do better than that. Anyway, loads. I mean, if you go up on the Spreadex site and you go to Premier League and you go to player markets, you'll see that most players for each team have been priced up for their goal spreads. You've also got season player goal minutes as well. So if you fancy someone to get off the bench and score goals later on, you can get involved there too. So go and check that out with Spreadex. And also go and subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel where you can find plenty more higher or lowers. This is episode 2. Episode 1's already out. We're back every week previewing the weekend action there too. So subscribe there. Do look at Spreadex for all your punting needs. On spread betting, we've got the EFL starting this week, Premier League next week, loads more going on too. So remember that losses can exceed your initial deposit. Please do gamble responsibly and enjoy the start of the Premier League season.